Welcome back to the Vault with Wayne Gorman. So today I want to talk about suicide and whether it's selfish or not. Just to clear that point up, because a lot of people say it isn't and a lot of people say it is. So I'll give you my reasoning on it and why I think the way I think. So I've just had a look online and found Nationwide Children's .org. This is an article that's been published February the 15th, 2024. Don't say it's selfish. Suicide is not a choice. So obviously they're saying that it isn't a choice, whereas I'm saying that it is. More than ever before, people understand that caring for our mental health is as important as caring for our physical health. However, there is still much work that needs to be done to break the stigmas that contribute to unnecessary shame and misunderstandings of mental illness. Well, there's no greater misunderstanding than somebody trying to understand that can't. So the person that wrote this article, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't understand. Now, there's a featured expert on it, and a John Ackerman, PhD. He's got a lovely smile, he's got lovely glasses, and I'm sure he's a lovely man. But it doesn't mean he's right. So the Centre for Suicide Prevention and Research, John Ackerman, PhD, is a clinical psychologist in behavioural health and suicide prevention. The coordinator for the Centre for Suicide Prevention and Research, a nationwide children's hospital. I don't know where that is, but there's a little picture. Lovely smile, like I said. And so this article, I'm assuming, is written by him. And I apologise to you. What's your name again? John. If you didn't write this, well, you shouldn't have put your picture at the end of it then, should you? So, don't say it's selfish. Suicide is not a choice. So, let's have a quick look at the first paragraph, and I'll just pull a couple of things out and just get into it. So, more than ever before, people understand that caring for our mental health is important. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. However, there is still much work that needs to be done to break stigmas. Now, I don't know why people use the word stigma when they're talking about mental health. It seems to be like the thing to do. Oh, the stigmas, the stigmas. It's like, what does that even mean? So anyway, they contribute towards unnecessary shame and misunderstanding of mental illness. Well, I believe he doesn't understand. I'd go as far to say as I know he doesn't if he's wrote this article. So despite strides in understanding that emotional difficulties are not personal shortcomings or a sign of weakness. Right. So a personal shortcoming. Not quite sure what he means there. Lack of understanding. And I would say that was quite personal. If you personally don't understand something, and if your choices lead to suicide, they're certainly shortcomings. So a sign of weakness. Well, there's nothing wrong with being weak, just to clarify. If you're down and you're feeling weak and you're not feeling able, you acknowledge that fact and be aware that it is a passing phase. It might be a long one, but it's a passing phase. And there will be light at the end of the tunnel if you speak to people that know what they're talking about, which is why I've done this channel, because I can help people that are really struggling, that have looked in books or listened to psychologists, or like this guy here, he's got a PhD. You go and sit in the room and they chat to you and they get the whiteboard out and they start drawing stupid little drawings and say, here's a bucket and you've got a lot of pressure in you and there's a hole and then you just need to let the pressure out. How's that going to help me if I'm suicidal? Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's just ridiculous. So Let's have a quick look here now on to this next paragraph. For example, some people still believe that engaging in suicidal behaviour is a personal choice. A belief is an opinion, right? So some people believe that suicidal behaviour is a personal choice. How's about I know it is, right? It's not your next door neighbour making the decision for you. If you're suffering and you decide to take your own life, you make that choice. You might not have your best thinking cap on, but you decide to do it. So, and that is a personal choice. It's nobody else choosing. So, take responsibility. This is part of how to reverse the neurotic type thinking. Not taking responsibility is what you don't want to do. And this is what this is encouraging, not to take responsibility. It's not a choice, free me from my burden. Well, no, that's not how it works. This is often followed by the unfair assumption that suicide is a selfish choice. Well, what else is it if it's not selfish? It's selfish to harm another human being, isn't it? For your own gratification, to make yourself feel better. Someone's done you down and you want to get one back over on them, and you think, well, I'll get physical and I'll hurt that individual. That's a selfish act. You're inflicting pain onto somebody else through hatred in order for you to have perverse joy and allegedly build your confidence as a human being in that destructive way. It doesn't work like that. So one might reasonably ask, given the unbearable loss and pain felt by those left behind, how can suicide not be considered selfish? Firstly, we underestimate how many factors contribute to an outcome as complex as final as suicide. Those who experience the kind of emotional pain associated with suicide do not typically want to die. Yes, they do. The act of killing yourself through suicide means you want to die. So again, that's not taking responsibility, because he's saying that they're doing it, but they don't want to do it. Well, if they didn't want to do it, they wouldn't do it. I didn't do it because I didn't want to do it, right? And I've been suicidal. I know what it's like. I had mental unbearable pain, not being able to sleep, severe anxiety and depression, antidepressants playing havoc with your body. And I had a choice, and that was to fight on and to live and to find a solution and not to do that. So you have a choice. Let's just be clear about that. So those who experience the kind of emotional pain, so do not want to die. Well, yes, they do. If I wanted to die, I'd have killed myself. It's as simple as that. And the reason why people do it is because they think that that is a better option. So they believe, at least, that their suffering will end through the act of suicide. And unlucky if there is an afterlife, unlucky if what the Buddha said is true about rebirth into unfavourable circumstances in the next life, you're going to have immense pain, far greater if you've taken your own life or that of another. So you better hedge your bets on there's only one lifetime if you're going to do something like that, and I wouldn't like to be putting my money on it. So individuals who struggle with the thoughts of suicide usually have a hard time thinking flexibly, and their ability to see an end to the pain and a life worth living is greatly compromised. Well, of course, because they're confused. That's the depreciation of your mental health. When it gets to that stage, you end up confused because you've been doubting, because you've been suffering with depression, because you've been suffering with anxiety, because you've been suffering with maybe PTSD, because you have sleep deprivation. All these factors come into it. Your diet's poor. I could go on forever about what happens to the body and the mind, but I want to cover this article and just try and stick to, is it selfish or not to take your own life? The answer is yes, by the way, before I go any further. So let's carry on. Second, viewing suicide as a choice promotes a misunderstanding that people who engage in suicidal behaviour are selfish. There's nothing more selfish than taking the life of somebody else or your own. So you are equal to another. The act of taking your own life is as bad as taking somebody else's. So this doesn't wash at all.